Alright, today's project is one I've been dreading for quite some time, and that is to replace the floor pans of my wife's Jeep. Now this sucker's been down for quite some time, and as I peel back the layers of the onion, the more fun I'm finding, and I'm sick on top of that, so this makes things even more fun. And I still have to do a run tonight, so let's get into it. Alright guys, well, this is what we have to deal with. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Mind the camera bumping around, I'm sorry, this is very confined space. What you can see up there is totally rotten. And all the way back here, I just opted to get 2 floor pans. And I didn't know that they made a single, I didn't see it beforehand, and so I bought 2 different floor pans. So we'll have to cut it and then, overlap them because they give you a little bit of extra length. So I've been going through here and trying to expose all the spot welds, and we're gonna have to drill these because these go over the unibody and then just replace this as we go. I'm gonna have to grind off all this seam sealer and redo it, and I think what we'll do is we'll just put chassis saver over all of this. So this is why I'm stripping this down here, is so I can put chassis saver on, because I had rust that was starting up here. The reason why is, if you look at this floor mat, the floor mat was soaking wet because the company that replaced the windshield in this Jeep prior to me owning it did a really half-assed job and didn't seal up about 6 inches of the windshield at all. There was no sealant in there, and then another 6 inches of it had lifted, and so the urethane wasn't adhering, and this is what it caused. That, with the exhaust cooking it, really destroyed the floor. So if you look right here, these are the studs for the seats, and one of them broke off in here. So that was really fun getting that out, and it took me like an hour, but I had to drill it out and re-tap it, and I've got 2 more to go. Hopefully they don't give me as much trouble. If you look over here, you can see there's body plugs in here. Well, this is where a body plug was, and a lot of good they do. They don't drain anything, and all that did was rot out. So now I'm gonna have to blow out or vacuum out the frame inside there and get that all cleaned up. If you look in there, you can kind of see the hole through there down to the bottom of the unibody. So anyway, let's get moving on getting these welds exposed and cut out, and then I will set the front floor pan in so you can kind of see how that looks. Tearing it. So the mat that's up here is stuff underneath this, and I really don't want to tear apart the dash to get it out of there. So, we got to figure that out, and then get this wiring out of the way too so we don't burn it up. I think I might just take the whole floor mat out, and I definitely will take the seat out. Set the floor pan in here. I need to get a hammer in here so I can kind of tap this forward. Yeah, that's better. Hold, please. just going to check this. I really want this out of the way. That's hindering, because I can't get this out of here without pulling all this crap down here. Alright, so as you can plainly see, the floor is out and we've got all this stripped back. I've got a little bit more to do. Let me show you. Got a little bit more to do back here where I've got to peel some of this rusty metal back and get rid of some of the seam sealer. So let me set you inside the car and I'll show you what we're doing down in here. Alright, we're going mobile here. So as you can see, there's still a little bit to do back there. I also discovered a little spot on the muffler here that's going to have to be welded. They didn't weld this when they built this pipe. I've started painting this with chassis saber. And yes, some of that will get ground off, and there are some areas in here, right here, that still need to be needle scaled and cleaned. But I wanted to use some of this up because I was painting something else. I was painting the drums for the Eagle, the brakes, and I don't want to waste the paint. This little can here, this teeny little thing's $22. So yeah, we're not wasting that. All right, let's get painting again, and hopefully this camera will stay in place so it doesn't tip over right into our paint. Now I'm going to be stripping the other side of the floor in here. I think I mentioned that before. And we're going to be able to save that side of the floor. Luckily, it's not too bad. And I'll show you that here in a minute. This is just using up the paint that I had left in the sponge brush. So we want to make sure that we're not wasting money here. Alright fellers, have a look. I'm not totally done yet. I've just painted what I could. I've still got to do some cleanup on some of those overlapping welds and get some of the junk metal out there. And then take a look at the driver's side floor pan here. So I'm frying, and it's 101 today or something, and it's hotter inside this Jeep. We still got it done, and it looks pretty good. Now, I will probably have to go back over that with a second layer and just make sure that we're covered anywhere that it was a little thin, but generally one coat of that will do, but I just want to be extra sure this isn't going to happen again. And the other thing I'm going to do is, you can see where that exhaust is right here. I've got a heat shield from a Grand Cherokee, and I'm going to rivet that to the new floor. So I'll drill the holes first for the rivets. I'll put some more of this paint inside those rivet holes. Then I'll strap that up on there after this floor is welded in, of course. And that should help prevent this exhaust from cooking this and cooking all the paint off the bottom. So I'll be back with the next stage here when we have all the metal stripped. I've got some more repair to do over here. I'll show you. If you look down in the corner over here, some of that tore and some of it was rusted out. You've got areas in here where I've got to get rid of these little pieces of metal. That's why I didn't paint in here. I don't want the paint over the top of that because it's not going to do us any good. So I want to get this all taken off and get all of this seam sealer off. And of course we will re-seam seal all of this. So there's plenty to do. And it's plenty hot. Stick with me, we'll get through it eventually. Just eating that elephant one bite at a time. And boy, it tastes terrible. Really terrible. Alright, so I've got these floor pans stripped and ready to go. Got all these spot weld holes drilled in here. But you can see we've got that all done. Now the question is, do I need to fill some of these holes? Because I think that these are extra holes, and even some of these. I'd really rather not have plugs in a bunch of places if I can help it, and especially if they're not doing any good. It's just one more place I've got to seam seal and worry about leaking. So what we're going to do now is set these in the vehicle and see if they fit. Alright, so I just thought I'd give you guys a quick demonstration of how I do these floor pans. So this piece is going to go over in there, right there, and down here, and it'll fit in here. I can show you, like so. I've left it a little long because you can see in the top there I've got to trim that, no biggie. I'm going to take that over here and put this on the metal, matching my template with the instructions. And if I ever forget what I'm doing or erase it by accident, then I can just go ahead and look at the cardboard. So I'm going to drill 1 or 2 holes right there to mount that tab. I'm going to bend this and bend that and bend this, and then it'll match the contours of the original floor. We'll put that in there and we'll be good to go. So I've got to do that one and one more, as well as grind right here so that I can actually mount that flat. And I touched up a few other areas that I didn't like the welds on, and we're getting close. I think this is pretty good on the bottom here. It doesn't feel like there's any holes, but I'll get underneath and check with the Black Widows. And then we'll do the back section here. All right, I don't know where we left off. That was probably 2-3 weeks ago at least, and I've been slammed. We're getting back on the Jeep, trying to finish up this floor, and I found some more rust in there, so we're going to try to take care of that. And I ended up having to cut out a piece of the panel because underneath the door where it runs, you know, it'd be essentially your inner rocker. It was all wavy from pulling off those spot welds. There's nothing I could do about it, but it actually pulled a hole through. So I'm in there replacing that piece right now, and then I've got to replace the underlying metal, because where it comes across and then makes a 90, which the main floor pan sits on, it's all screwed up and rusted out. And I got the same problem in the back that I've got to fix. So I'm going to get all that welded in and then paint it. So let me show you where we're at here. So you can see right here, this is kind of a big mess. I'm trying not to get the light behind the phone here, but this is got a hole through it. I've got to weld that, and this is a factory hole, but this was all rusted out in here, and this is welded like this against that. Oh, my light just turned off. That's helpful. Anyway, I'm in the middle of building this panel here and welding it in. This whole thing was just basically rotten. So I'll take the die grinder and relieve it where it doesn't line up perfectly, like right there. This is overlapped. So we'll take that and press it down and cut in there, and then you'll have the perfect gap for your weld. The same thing on the side here. This is kind of overlapped a little bit. And then we'll fix this bottom. That's going to be real fun, trying to weld that and grind it from up here. And I already put my leg down here earlier, and there was a Black Widow sitting there. So this Jeep has really earned its name, the Black Widow. I'll have to pop a little logo that I made in there, and you can see what I'm going to put on this Jeep. So she's earned her name. Well, fellas, the day has finally arrived. We've got the subfloor done. Look in here. She isn't pretty, but we're going to be kind of hammer forming this a little bit anyway, because this panel was so messed up. But it turned out pretty good. And then this will all be seam sealed. And then I'm going to go through here and obviously clean all this dust and stuff off here. And we got to blow this out and clean it out. This rust in here is not on the frame itself. It is just from all this grinding dust. Went through and touched up a little bit more in here. Got the back done. So the sun's screwing with the camera here, but it turned out really good. Try and shape this lens so we can actually show you. And I'm just shooting all this on the cell phone because it's too hard to do it with the GoPro. But I think we're ready to go, and I'm gonna go ahead and start fitting that floor, which is over here, and get that set in, and then we're gonna have to cut the floor to match this, and then we'll also have to cut the floor between the two pieces where they overlay. But I think the best thing to do is to lay one down and tack it in a couple of places, and then we'll be able to see where that's going to fit. And then some of these holes are the original holes, so I've drilled in those panels to match, and so I know where they go. And also, if you look up here, this is the line from the original weld. That's why I left that little witness mark there. I'll be welding over that, but that will show me where to abut that panel to, and how far to kick it forward. So that's the next step, and I am so glad to be on to that, because it's getting cold out here, and I need to get on to putting the motor in and finishing up the bumper. So let's show you the bumper. Alright, so here's what we have for the bumper so far. I do not have the end panels fabricated yet. I had some made up, but they weren't working out the way I wanted, so I'm going to bend up some pieces that match the contour of the body, and then backfill these in with one more angle. I think that'll be the easiest thing to do. But you can see we've got a receiver in here from a winch, and then one of the last things we've got to do is change these plates out. These are just the regular Cherokee bumper mounts, and I've got the ones that tie clear back into the frame, back up in here. I had one and I copied it and made two. And then if I can, I'm going to put some sleeves in the frame here so that it doesn't crush down when I tighten those. I don't think that'll be a problem, but we want to avoid that. So let me show you how this is going to look with a winch installed. Down a little bit because it's not bolted on very tight, and there's black widow nest all over that, and I just tucked that up against my body, so that was nice. But here's how she looks. This is a 9,000 pound Warren high speed. I got this for 75 bucks. And the only thing that was wrong was one pin inside here needs to be redone. It's rotted away. It's the only thing I could find wrong with it. And so I've got the pins sitting around somewhere, and I've got a wireless mount on here. Or excuse me, a wireless controller. And I haven't figured out my battery setup just yet, but this came with the cables, and they're nice and long, so we should have plenty of options. I'm thinking about putting a battery cutoff. I'll wire that in there. I'd like to have a way to put this in the back, so that when I'm using this, that I can switch it from back to front, or you know, whatever, if I'm planning on doing some serious off-roading. That's the overview. Let's get back on the floor. Alright guys, I wanted to show you where we're at. We're making some progress. We got this in here, got all that subfloor underneath welded down. I'm talking right there. Let's see if I can point the light at it. Right there. And then you can see that'll weld this top floor down to it. There's a little pop out right here that we got to account for, but I think we can hammer form that to go over this other panel. And then fitment wise, I think we're actually okay here. This looks like a big gap, but when you push this down and kind of, you push this down here and get it on the frame rail, you can kind of pull this up and it actually mates to this perfectly. This panel, you can see I can actually kind of stick my finger behind it. So this is behind this one. Now the other little snag I ran into, and I don't know if this is my fault or if it's just a quirk of the floor pans being changed over the years, is I had this all welded in. If I can get the mat to stay. Set this light down. Alright, so I had this all welded in right here, but if you look, now I've got a hole here. I had to cut that back out because the original floor didn't match this pan. And I don't know why, but I'm just going to match the new pan, and I'll take and put a piece in right here and re-weld that up and paint behind the spot welds so we don't have any issues with that. And then we'll be ready to touch all this up, and then finally we can weld this down. Finally. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. But as you can see, we are making fantastic progress here. It's just painfully slow with having to do all the painting and everything because I don't want this to rust out again. And then of course, we still have the issue of these little plugs in here, but those can be done after this is all painted and installed. It doesn't matter. And I did pick up some seam sealer today. I got 2 bottles of it, or tubes, or whatever you want to call it, but I've got these all labeled so we know what we're doing. And I'm going to TIG weld up one of those little caps because I can't find another one. I think it's the one that goes right here. So I'll TIG weld that and fill in all the little holes, and we'll seam seal the crap out of it. And I'll paint them first, of course. So stay tuned. We're getting there. It's just painfully slow. Okay, we're one step further. It's a few days later. I haven't had much chance to work on this, but you can see I've got all the spot weld holes drilled, and I've got this piece bent up. I just cut it and cut it, twist, lift, twist, and we're in really good shape. That should weld on there very nicely. Got all that stuff done. Got our tab holes done. This aligns better than it looks like on the video. I'll bend this just a little bit to kick it over, but it is really well aligned. And we've only got one hole where we just missed a teeny bit, but no biggie. That'll fill in with weld. And then this is actually for the top floor pan, so we don't need an extension piece on here or anything. It took me a minute to figure that out because it wasn't obvious. But when I started looking at it, there's a kick up on the panel, and what had happened is that little overlap that I showed you. That's this piece here. This was kicking it back into a weird area, so it wasn't obvious to me where that went. We're gonna save that piece because I'm not sure if I goofed up here, this dog leg's gonna get straightened out, and then I've got to cut that back panel something like this because they put the hole too low. The hole would have been somewhere in here, so not real helpful, but we can do it. It's just that you've got stuff like this behind it, these big structural pieces, so I'll have to paint these and then get all that taken care of. And then I still need to go down and get seam sealer and get that taken care of. But this is a big step, so we'll get this welded up real quick and make sure these are solid. I'll just go TIG weld them in the shop. And beyond that, I've got the floor pan strips. So let me show you that real quick. Okay, so here she is in all of her stripped glory. This took for frickin' ever. I used a Scotch-Brite pad on it, and it took it off as fast as a sanding pad would. But if you look in these little ribs here, there's still some black paint. So I think I'm gonna try and pop at least this end in the sandblaster and get the rest of that. And then I still haven't done the other side. Figured I'd do that in place after it's welded down. But the problem is, this taking so long wasted a ton of my time, and I should have been further along. And I am on limited time here to get this done, and it's gonna start snowing. So I've got to get this thing done, get the Jeep up and running, get the engine put in, and I have zero help. So what that means is, once again, time crunch, no help. And in the meantime, this takes time away from paying work. We're just going to focus on what needs to get done. That's my family. It's my wife's Jeep, and I want to get it done. It's been a year that she's been without this car. So enough's enough, right?